Hey everyone, so today we're diving into a collection of recent briefings from the Human Rights in China Substack. We're really going to be looking at how control is shifting in our digital age and what that actually means for people living through it.
Exactly. And, looking through the source material, I was just so struck by these three things that seemed completely random. Someone posting on social media, a simple church donation, and a figure skating performance at the Olympics. I mean, on the surface, what do they even have to do with each other? But as we're about to see, they are all connected to this much, much bigger story.
Right. And that's really the core question we're going to explore. The first piece of that puzzle starts right where so much of our life happens now, online. The source material actually calls this the algorithmic age, and it describes this new kind of digital wall that's being built, one that's a lot harder to see.
So the source has a name for this, algorithmic encirclement. And look, this isn't your old school censorship where a post just gets deleted and you know it. This is so much more subtle. It's when a platform's own recommendation algorithm, the thing that's supposed to show you new and interesting stuff, is basically weaponized to build an invisible fence around certain topics. It doesn't delete them, it just makes them impossible for anyone else to find.
Wow. So that term, algorithmic encirclement, it sounds so technical, right? But I'm just trying to picture what that actually feels like. It's like you think you're shouting a message out to the world, but you're actually in a soundproof room. Your voice is just contained. And the scariest part? You probably would have no idea it was even happening.
That's it exactly. And the source really describes this as a 1-2 punch. So you've got that subtle, invisible control, but then you've also got the very direct, very obvious kind. The briefing points to Apple removing an encrypted messaging app called Mosavi from its App Store in China. So they're not just limiting what you can discover, they're actually taking away the very tools you could use to talk privately in the first place.
And that digital control has such real-world consequences. I mean, it's not happening in a vacuum. The very same logic of just tightening control is being applied to the legal system itself, especially in Hong Kong, where it feels like the whole idea of justice is on trial.
To really wrap your head around it, the briefings give us some really stark numbers. Let's start with this one, 2. That's the number of retirees sentenced to prison.
It's so hard to comprehend. It's not just the prison sentence, it's the reason why. For social media posts, we are talking about people in their retirement years being sent to jail for simply sharing their opinions online. It's unbelievable.
And it doesn't stop with individual cases. It scales up to targeting entire groups. The next number is 47. That's how many pro-democracy figures were all swept up together in one single huge trial in Hong Kong. The sheer scale of it is just massive. And finally, a number that just shows how severe these sentences are. 20. 20 years. That was the prison sentence handed down to Jimmy Lai, a media owner and a vocal critic of the government. 20 years for his work.
So you hear a number like 20 years, and you have to ask, right? What are people actually doing to get sentences like this? Well, the source points to things like sharing what's deemed seditious content, which can be defined really broadly, or even something as basic as telling other people not to vote. And now, with the new Article 23 security law, that net gets cast even wider, sometimes targeting the family members of activists.
It's an incredibly wide net. And that pressure, it doesn't just stop with political speech. It seeps into these really deeply personal parts of life, like what you believe, your religion. And it's aimed directly at professions that are literally built on the idea of free expression, like journalism.
Yeah, absolutely. The briefings talk about a major crackdown on what are called house churches, basically small religious groups that operate outside of official state control. And the charges they bring are, well, they're surreal. In one case, church elders were sentenced for fraud. And what was this terrible fraud they committed? Accepting tithes, donations from their own congregation.
And that's the key right there, isn't it? The source quotes someone putting this into context, saying it's all part of a larger effort to prevent the free exercise of religion. So the charge might say fraud, but the real target is the freedom to worship however you choose. It's not about money at all, it's about controlling belief.
And that pressure is felt just as intensely by the press. The briefing points out this chilling silence for media groups in Hong Kong after Jimmy Lai's 20-year sentence was handed down. It just speaks volumes about the climate of fear.
But here's what I found so amazing. The briefing puts that silence right next to a story of resilience. Because on the other side of the planet, at Stanford University, a conference was held specifically to support and build independent Chinese language media. So even as the space for a free press is shrinking in one place, the fight to keep it alive continues somewhere else. It's a powerful contrast.
And that whole idea of keeping stories alive, it brings us full circle.
Right back to that Olympic performance we talked about at the very beginning. It's just the perfect example of how one person's story can become this powerful echo of a much bigger history.
Right. This is about the figure skater Elisa Liu. And the conversation around her performance wasn't just about how amazing she was on the ice. As the source says, it was about the history her story brings to light. It was this incredible moment where a sporting event became a platform for memory.
And that history the source mentions is specifically the 1989 pro-democracy movement. Her family has direct ties to that event. So when she took the ice at the Olympics, her performance was suddenly about more than just her own achievement. It became a living, breathing link to a piece of history that has been so systematically suppressed.
It's just incredible to think about. One single athlete, through her own family's journey, can suddenly reignite a conversation that's been quiet for decades. She's introducing a whole new generation to that history, maybe without even intending to.
And that, for me, really ties all of these different threads together. You go from the invisible control of an algorithm to the cold, hard reality of a courtroom, and then to the global stage of an ice rink. But they're all part of the same human struggle over who gets to tell their story.
Which really just leaves us with this final question to think about. How do our own stories, the ones we choose to share, and maybe, just as importantly, the ones we choose to listen to, how do they keep history from being erased?